It has been a while since I last talked about the fact that it has been a while. This is not necessarily the ordinary way of cultivating a relationship with listeners, going about business or creating stuff. It seems to be my way, though. This way has looked and still looks like this. I show up, I broadcast some stuff, I continue for some weeks. Sooner or later, I get overwhelmed by a multitude of problems of different flavors. There are conceptual fuck-ups. There are technical fuck-ups, and then, of course, there are the life happens fuck-ups. When that overwhelm reaches a point where I'm drowning, I, of course, give up stuff that seems less important than stuff that seems more important. I focus on swimming, for example. And that is, with great precision, the moment when I leave the stage of the social medias, which, by the way, I have left entirely about a month ago. I also stop my radio shows and mixes and, well, a lot of stuff. You throw stuff overboard when your ship is sinking to reduce weight, don't you? And of course, with this narrative about my ways, I could be telling the truth. But truth is a pretty difficult thing to grasp and share. That is why I call it a narrative. That is why I talk about things seeming than rather being a certain way. We cannot be absolutely sure about things we tend to call reality or something like our past. We are storytellers, and we love to stick to stories we know well. Stories that make sense in our world. Stories that help strengthen our identity, even if the resulting reality is a piece of shit. Even if we feel miserable in that reality, and even if the identity we strengthen with our stories is the identity of a loser. I tell stories that deal with the stuff that happens in my world. That is a narrative or story that borders on being a fact. The story that I'm telling stories. It's still not a fact. It is still a story. And I could go on like this and create a logical, philosophical and semantic maze, but I would love to focus on something else instead. I had to remove all the hot cues my youngest created on the next track. So I talked about my behavior online that has a lot of resemblance with the personality disorder. I connect, then I disconnect. Some kind of narcissistic procedure on a larger scale. More commonly, this kind of behavior is dedicated to a single person. I dedicate my love-bombing, intense caring and then gaslighting. I dedicate the constant flow of my communication tied to an entire audience, which of course is pretty tiny. I also talked about narratives, and of course we could dive into the abyss of reality construction. We could ask the question if there really is something we could call reality, but I'm afraid we would be drifting into the world of total mind fuck. And that is a place I feel like going to less and less frequently. I would prefer to talk about one aspect of the stories I tell myself. Those are the stories that have to do with conventions, best practices, and the right way to do things. That is the stuff influencers, experts and gurus flood the social medias with in order to feed the information greed of the masses. Some of them are making a lot of money along the way. Feeding the greedy masses is a perfect business model because the thing with greed is the more you throw at it, the bigger it grows. Yes. Anyways, I had a convention in my mind since I started to write my first newsletters and blog posts 20 years ago. A convention I had learned and derived from experts on writing first, and then later from experts on marketing, social media and people persuasion. Everyone was telling the same truth. In parentheses. It never worked for me. It felt awkward. I rarely applied it to my writing efforts. I nevertheless kept it as a very important, potentially life-saving strategy. I simply sucked at it. I was too stupid and too overly self-conscious at the same time to make it work. And that was the reason why nothing ever worked for me in the social media marketing realm. That at least was my narrative. The convention I'm talking about is the following. There has to be something in it for the reader, the listener, the audience. There has to be something in this for you, which I translated to there needs to be important information, some major inspiring meme, some answers to daunting questions in the stuff I share online. And I have to know in advance what these things are. And to be able to pull that off, following the convention, I have to think about who you are. I have to think about which problems you are struggling with, and I should better make sure to offer some sound advice if I wanted to keep you around. Yes. There is a problem with my setup because it's new and I'm experimenting with it, but there's a problem with the wisdom of experts too. There's a problem with the solutions others offer in their sometimes overcompensating and sometimes also self-inflating attitude of knowing, understanding and pseudo-giving. I know what I'm talking about because I'm both. I'm an expert of sorts, but I'm also someone who seeks advice a lot. The solutions experts offer are mainly generalizations. They pretend to be solutions for everyone or even a special audience, but they are not. The tricky problems that make us seek the advice of experts are exactly and paradoxically those where we are meant to find very unique and individual solutions ourselves. And maybe that is one of the reasons why so many creatives, entrepreneurs and other ambitious people give up on their journeys. Like me, they might be afraid to let go of conventional wisdom. They might hesitate to tune into their own wisdom and intuition. And like me, they might fear to act on that very wisdom. Want to know the latest wisdom and intuition I came across last night? I do not really know what I'm doing here. I do not really have a clue why you are listening. And it would be a stretch to attach the stuff I'm doing here to some kind of elaborate business strategy or marketing plan. To be honest, this feels like one of the many things I'm meant to do. It is also something I enjoy doing a lot when I do it this way, more or less free of any intention, just following the flow of sharing the stuff that happens in my life, in my body, and in my mind. The special ding, that's German. The special thing I'm doing here is to honestly, as much as I can, and openly, as much as I dare, document the creative business and spiritual journey I've been on for more than 30 years now. And I won't talk a lot about these years, but rather about what's happening these days. This, of course, is also a strategy that some marketing guru, social media marketing guru shared several years ago. Document, don't create. Gary Vaynerchuk came up with that one. I'd say document and create, or rather create and document the process of creation. But that is probably what he suggested. What does it mean to document the process of creating in the realm of business, music, writing, and other areas? It's about documenting the fuck-ups. It's about documenting the frustration I deal with in these situations. It's about sharing the solutions I come up with. And of course, it's about documenting the process of dealing with the multitude of problems those solutions give birth to. Yes. There's always new and more problems waiting. And therefore, it's wise to choose those problems as much as we can wisely. This process is ugly, it's hurtful, and really, it is embarrassing. It is what I'm doing here and now. And maybe that's why I mix the documentation process with music, to help you digest, just so you manage to stick around while I'm swearing and sweating. So you come back when I come back after some recent drowning. So you stick around even when I'm 2 or 3 inches away from throwing in the towel again.